Hey folks, welcome back to Oddwood. I'm Evan. Today we're not going to do a forging video. I actually figured I'd take the opportunity and I'd talk about something that probably isn't talked about enough. And that's, beginner blacksmiths and people that are just barely getting into the craft. The big thing about this, I guess, everybody worries about what style hammer you choose and how heavy a hammer you choose, and when you're making drifts, matching your drift to the handle that you're going to be using, if you're using pre-bought or whatever. There's a lot of little things that go into it, and I won't go into all of them. And don't get me wrong, those things are extremely important. But the problem is, I think people, when they first get into it, focus too much on specifics. And they kind of have a tendency to skip over the fundamentals and the basics of blacksmithing. I'm saying this from personal experience. When I first started, I started making knives. And I started to move material, and that was a great way to learn how the material moves and what heat you have to be at. However, I skipped over a lot of things like punching holes, drifting holes, rivets, stuff like scroll work, which, I've been doing it for a few years, few years now, and I still kind of struggle with a lot of those basics. So basically what I'm saying is, when you first get into it, start out with simple projects like making a punch or making a chisel or scroll work. Start off, tongs are a great example of a good beginner blacksmith project. Teaches you how things move, teaches you good skills like how to do set downs and isolating materials, drawing material out, tapers. These are all things that are awesome. Now, that being said, that brings me to my first point, if you will, which is aesthetics. I think people worry too much when they first start about how things look. Now, especially with tools, it doesn't really matter how it looks. If you're making it for you, and you're going to be the one using it, as long as it's functional and does its own job. I'm a big pusher, if you will, because I can't think of a better word, of function over form. If it works and it does what you want it to do, it doesn't really matter what it looks like. You're not selling it, you're not distributing it to the masses. It's just for you and your own personal use. So don't focus so much about the form. Focus on the function of it. And the more you do, the form will come, as well as speed and other things like that. You'll become a lot more efficient, but you need to focus on the basics first. I hate to quote Alex Steele here. It kind of drives me nuts now, but one of his sayings or slogans, if you will, is, "It's not stupid if it works." And I'm a pretty big believer in that. So, yeah, don't worry about aesthetics. Focus on the basics. Focus on the fundamentals of things. Once you work through it a few times, you're going to find yourself getting better. You need to figure out how things move and how things are going to work in order to make it look better. Here's a great example of that. When I first started out, like I said, I started out making knives, and I was like, all right, so there's all these bladesmiths out there that are using dog's head hammers. I want a dog's head hammer, but I couldn't afford one, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to make one. So the first hammer that I ever made, and I had been doing it for like all of maybe 2 months, I made a dog's head hammer. And I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't have a plan in place. I really didn't have the right tooling because I didn't have a plan in place. I hadn't done the research, and I just kind of jumped in both feet. So anyway, the first hammer that I made was this dog's head right here. The head is way too long. It's horribly balanced, and I know you want it, head heavy on a dog's head hammer, but this was just way over the top, to the point where it's really, really hard to control, and it's really not usable. I mean, it is and it isn't. For my purposes and my preferences, I don't like it. This thing sits in my rack, kind of as a reminder that I need to, do my due diligence and plan things out ahead of time. Now, the whole planning part of it, that's a huge step. Now, if you're going to make a set of tongs, first you got to figure out what you're going to use for stock size, and there's plenty of videos and articles and whatnot out there that'll teach you and show you, what you're going to end up with roughly when you start out with a specific stock size. Now, you can do that all with just, a heat source, your forge, whatever you're using for a heat source, whether it's coal or propane or I think there's actually people using natural gas and whatever. But there's different ways to do that. So you need a heat source, you need a hammer, which doesn't have to be anything special. It can be a, $5.95 hardware store, 2.5 pound special. It doesn't matter. You don't need anything special. And you're going to need a way to punch the hole in them. Now you can do it with, just a regular drill or a drill press if you've got access to a drill press, or you can punch the hole. So there's 3 different options there. But what I'm getting at is know which option you're using and make sure you have all of the tools and all of the pieces in place ahead of time. It really sucks to get to a certain point where you're ready to do something and then realize, I don't have what I need. Now that plays into organization, which if you look around my shop, I am not organized at all in the least bit. You probably, if you watched any of my videos, I spend more time looking for my left glove than I do actually working. But yeah, just, focus on the little things. Focus on making sure you have everything you need for that specific project. When you do more of those projects, especially stuff like tongs, if you're going to make your own tongs, you're going to end up making a lot of them. A lot. Like, an unbelievable amount. You wouldn't believe how many sets you're going to need when you first start out. But that being said, when you look at that first set of tongs that you made compared to the most recent set of tongs that you made, you're going to see a drastic difference because that form was developed over that 10 or 15 sets of tongs. So don't focus so much on the aesthetics on the first one. Kind of let it go and figure it out. As you go down the line, things are going to get better. You're going to get better at cleaner forging. You're going to get better at things like making sure that your scale is off so you're not pushing it back down into your material and making it harder and causing pitting and all kinds of lumpy, bumpy messes. And it's basically all you need to start out. You need a heat source, you need a block of steel that you can use as a anvil. You need a hammer, and you need a wire brush. You can basically make everything else that you need from there. Okay, so that brings me to my last point, which is safety in your shop. Now, safety can go a long way in a lot of directions, and I'm not going to get into all of it. I mean, you know, there's hearing and respiratory safety, and there's eye safety, there's, you know, simple things like you should have a pair of gloves. If you can manage it, you know, a full leather apron is a great way to go. A lot of guys prefer a half apron. I myself prefer a half apron, but I have a full-length apron, which I recently kind of rebuilt, if you will. So I'm trying to use that more and more. You'll see that a lot more in my videos. But simple things like not having flammables near your work area. It's not difficult for a piece of scale to fly off the piece that you're working, land on, you know, some cardboard that's sitting around, and burst into flames. You got to be mindful of stuff like that. And the reason I push gloves so much is I have burns, and every other blacksmith that you're going to see on YouTube and anywhere else in the world, trust me, it's not just YouTube, blacksmiths in general, you're going to have burns all over you. From silly mistakes, mishandling material, scale flying all over the place, leaving these awesome little blisters all over your hands and your arms. And it sucks, but that's part of what goes along with it. And not that it makes it any better, but you kind of get used to it. And you will get better about positioning yourself in relation to what you're working so that you don't get hit as much. But yeah, safety's huge. I'm horrible about wearing safety glasses. I need to get better about that, but I'm going to push it anyway because it is something that I need to get better about. Gloves are a big thing. Aprons are not essential, but they'll save you from lighting yourself up. Let me show you a great example of where an apron would have saved my butt. This is my barn coat, if you will. This is the one I wear in the shop quite a bit. Usually not when I'm forging, but when I'm getting everything ready. It's cold up here in Vermont. You need a jacket. I wasn't even forging when this happened. I was actually using an angle grinder. And if I had been wearing, I don't know how well you can see it, if I had been wearing an apron, I could have completely avoided this. Now this burnt through this coat, through the pants that I was wearing, and left a nice freaking mark on my leg. That was great. But the simple things, you know, being aware of your surroundings, what's around you, will go a huge way for safety. I'm not going to push any more than that. I think I've basically covered what I wanted to cover. Yeah, that being said, I'm out till next time. Y'all have a good one. Be safe.